Communication is not the problem. It's a symptom. When couples say we can't communicate, what they often mean is we can't connect. And underneath the communication breakdowns, well, there are usually deeper issues. It could be unmet expectations, unhealed wounds, different conflict styles, or simply not knowing how to be vulnerable with each other. Do you ever feel like you're missing the mark with your wife? You're not alone. We ask over 600 wives what they really want their husbands to understand. The results? 10 powerful insights and 10 simple actions to help you love her better. Stop guessing, start connecting. Join the 10-day challenge today. Find the link in our show notes. Hey, welcome to today's Awesome Marriage Podcast. I am so glad that you joined us today because I'm going to talk about something that I think is really important. 5 things that aren't really communication and what to do about it. So let's jump in. So picture this. You come home after a really long day and your spouse asks, how are you doing? And you say, fine. But your tone says everything but fine. But they hear what you say and so they pick up on it. Instead of asking what's wrong, they pull out their phone and they start scrolling through it, and then you notice you feel even more hurt, and then you retreat to another room. And later that night, you fire off some sarcastic comment about how nice it must be to have so much free time to scroll on your phone. And they roll their eyes, and you go to bed frustrated, and you feel miles apart, even though you're in the same house and you're sleeping as far apart as you can on that bed without falling off. Sound familiar? So here's the thing. You both think you've been communicating, but have you really? Communication, it is hands down one of the biggest pain points in marriage. And so let me share, after working with couples for so many years, I've learned that we all bring our own style of communication into a relationship and then into the marriage. And it's shaped, that style, by past experiences. It's shaped by our family of origin. And when those styles clash, unhealthy rhythms show up that create distance instead of connection. So today, let's look at 5 things that aren't really communication, even though they may feel like it. And I'm going to share some practical tips to help you build healthier rhythms and routines that strengthen your marriage. Are you ready? Okay, let's dive in. So, why communication struggles are so common? Well, before we get into the 5 pitfalls, let's talk about why communication is the number one struggle couples mention in marriage counseling. Hands down. Every couple mentions it. So here's what I've observed. Communication is not the problem. It's a symptom. When couples say we can't communicate, what they often mean is we can't connect. And underneath the communication breakdowns, well, there are usually deeper issues. It could be unmet expectations, unhealed wounds, different conflict styles, or simply not knowing how to be vulnerable with each other. Then we also tend to overestimate how well we communicate. We think because we're talking that we're communicating, right? But talking at someone isn't the same as talking with someone. And here's the kicker. Most of us never learned healthy communication skills growing up. We're modeling what we saw in our families of origin. For better or for worse, we're modeling it. The unhealthy rhythms that I see most often, well, avoidance, making assumptions huge, and attack. Couples either shut down and avoid hard conversations, or they assume they know what their spouse is thinking about without asking, or they go on the offensive when they feel hurt or misunderstood. Make sense? So the good news, these patterns can change, but first, we've got to recognize what's not actually communication. So let's talk about the 5 non-communication pitfalls. Number 1, the silent treatment or avoidance. Because it's such a big deal. Silent treatment, withdrawing, shutting down, or just avoiding the conversation altogether. right? So why do we mistake silence for communication? Because I think we think our spouse should just know we're upset. Or we believe our silence is sending a message. And it is. It's just not the one that we think it is or that we want it to send. So instead of communicating hurt or disappointment, silence communicates rejection and punishment. And over time, the silent treatment erodes trust and safety, and your spouse learns they can't come to you because you'll shut them out when things get hard. It creates this dynamic where one person is constantly walking on eggshells because they're afraid to upset you, because they know you'll disappear emotionally if they do. The antidote? Well, use your words. Even if all you can say is, I'm really hurt right now and I need some time to process before we talk, that's communication. It lets your spouse know what's happening instead of leaving them questioning and guessing what's going on. Pitfall number 2, hinting, expecting, mind reading. So dropping hints and expecting your spouse to read your mind, why do we do that? Well, often it's because we're afraid of being direct. We don't want to seem needy. We don't want to seem demanding. We think if they really loved me, they just know. But here's the truth. Your spouse can't read your mind. And expecting them to be is setting both of you up for failure. Unspoken expectations are just resentments waiting to happen. You drop hints about wanting date night, or help with the kids, or affection. But when your spouse doesn't pick up on them, you feel hurt, and they feel confused, and both of you end up frustrated. So what would be the solution? Be clear and direct. I'd love to go on a date this weekend. Can we plan something? That's so much healthier than sighing heavily while scrolling through restaurant menus and hoping that your spouse notices what you're doing. Clarity is kindness. Pitfall number 3, venting, dumping without listening. So here's a big one. Venting or dumping your day, your feelings, your frustrations, but never actually listening to your spouse in return. We all need to process and to be heard, and that's healthy. But when one spouse consistently unloads without making space for the other, it becomes one-sided and it becomes draining. Real dialogue requires both talking and listening. So how do you move from venting to real conversation? Well, start by asking yourself, have I made space for my spouse to share too? And after you process, say, how are you doing? What's on your mind? And then this is the real key. Actually listen. Don't just wait for your turn to talk again. The rhythm to build, take turns. Create a pattern where both people feel heard and valued, not just one. Pitfall number 4, sarcasm, passive aggression. Wow. Let's talk about that for just a minute. The I'm just joking approach to avoiding honest conversation doesn't work. Why do couples use sarcasm? Because it, I think, feels safer than being vulnerable. You can say what you really feel, but you disguise it as humor. And if your spouse gets upset, you can always say, I was just kidding. Why are you so sensitive? Right? But sarcasm is a shield. It protects you from being fully known, but it also prevents real intimacy. Over time, your spouse stops trusting what you say because they're never sure if you're being real or just making another dig. In the Bible, Ephesians 4:15 tells us to speak the truth in love, not the truth in sarcasm, not the truth disguised as a joke, the truth in love. And that means being honest, being kind, even when it's hard. So the shift is to replace sarcasm with sincerity. Instead of saying, oh sure, thanks for finally helping, try, I really appreciate when you help with the dishes. It makes me feel supported. Huge difference there. Pitfall number 5, digital-only connection. Finally, let's talk about texting, messaging, all kinds of digital communication. Don't get me wrong. I am not anti-technology, obviously. Look at us marriage. Texting can be great for quick updates, for encouragement, or staying connected throughout the day. That works great. But here's the problem. The problem comes when texting becomes your primary way of communicating about important things. You miss depth. Why? Because texts lack tone, lack body language, and the ability to respond in real time to what you're seeing in your spouse. So misunderstandings multiply when you're trying to navigate hurt feelings or make big decisions over text. And here's another trap. Spending the evening scrolling on your phone while sitting next to your spouse might feel like you're together, but you're not. You're not connecting. You're parallel processing. You're not actually engaging with each other. The balance is to use technology to enhance connection, not to replace it. Save the important conversations for face-to-face. Put the phones down during dinner. Make eye contact. Be present. So, what do you do next? How do we build some healthy patterns? How do you just replace those bad habits with healthier patterns? Well, first, create regular rhythms for connection. Don't wait for problems to arise before you communicate. Build in daily or weekly check-ins. Maybe it's coffee together in the morning, or a walk after dinner, or weekly date night where you actually talk to each other. Second, practice active listening. This means you put down your phone, you make eye contact, and you really hear your spouse, not just planning your response when they quit talking. Repeat back what you heard in your own words to make sure you understood correctly. And then third, speak up early. Don't let resentment build. If something bothers you, address it kindly and quickly. Proverbs 27:5 says, better is open rebuke than hidden love. So don't hide your concerns. Bring them into the light with grace. Fourth, assume the best. When your spouse says something that hurts, just pause. Pause before you react. And then ask clarifying questions. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Most of the time, their intent wasn't to wound you. And finally, invite God into your communication. James 1:19 says, everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. That's countercultural advice in a world that rewards quick comebacks and hot takes. But it's exactly what healthy communication looks like. Pray together as a couple. Ask God to help you see each other with compassion, to speak with kindness, and to listen with humility. And speaking with humility, this is so crucial. When you're trying to repair poor communication habits, grace and humility have to lead the way. You're both going to mess up. You're both going to fall back into old patterns. But instead of keeping score, extend grace. Apologize when you need to. Forgive quickly. Remember, you're on the same team. Don't forget that. So here's your challenge this week. Identify which non-communication trap that you fall into most often. Is it the silent treatment? Expecting your spouse to read your mind? Venting without listening? Using sarcasm to avoid honesty? Or relying too much on digital communication? You got to be honest with yourself and then commit to one small shift this week toward healthier, God-honoring communication with your spouse. So maybe that means saying, I need to talk to you about something, but I need a few minutes to gather my thoughts first. That's okay to say that. That's fine. Maybe it's putting your phone away. Maybe you put it away during dinner and other times, and maybe it's replacing a sarcastic comment with a sincere one. Whatever it is, Start small, because real change happens one conversation, one choice, one moment, of course, of courage at a time. Your marriage is worth the effort. And the connection you're looking for, well, it's possible. And it starts with learning what real communication actually looks like. And having the courage to practice it, even when it feels awkward, because it probably will. Even when it's vulnerable, that's uncomfortable at times, but it's worth pushing through. All of those things will make a difference. Thanks for being here today. I'm cheering you guys on. Well, next week, my special guest is Mark Batterson. We're going to talk about his new book. Nancy and I, in a couple of weeks, are going to be talking about spiritual warfare in the calm. And then I'm going to end up the month again with a solo. We're going to talk about the difficulty that surround thankfulness. We'll see you guys next week.